Tolkien out in cinemas now. Movie starring Nicholas Hoult and Lily Collins. Movie obviously about John Ronald Tolkien, one of the most famous and influential fantasy writers of all time, probably. So the movie starts during the Battle of Somme, during the First World War, which Tolkien was a part of as a soldier. And it shows us Tolkien himself, sick, feverish, as he's trying to make his way through the battlements, through the trenches, during the chaos of the battle itself, and he's trying to get to his friend that hasn't been writing to him for quite some time, and he hasn't heard about him, and so he's worried that maybe his friend died during the battle, so he's trying to find him. And as he makes his way through those trenches, we get all those flashbacks of his earlier life, going back to his early childhood when he lived in the countryside with his mother and his brother, and then through his time at school and at college in Oxford as well. And I think that framing the story this way is mainly what will make it work for the general audience, the people that are maybe not interested in Tolkien's works themselves or fantasy in general, because it's so grounded in his private life. So instead of focusing on his writing process and his works themselves, the movie instead focuses on three other aspects of his life. So first, we get to see how he developed a friendship with other members of TCBS, I think that was called. It was a secret society of his fellow artists that he and his friends set up way back in school. Then, secondly, his relationship with Edith, who was the love of his life, basically, and who was a massive influence on all of his works. And lastly, his passion towards linguistics, because as you may or may not know, that was the main driving force for Tolkien. He didn't really start off inventing all those stories, Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, Silmarillion, themselves. He started by inventing entire languages with whole grammar and rules and entire new vocabulary. And then he basically needed a mythology and a world for those languages to exist. So he created all his books. That's how Middle Earth came to be. And as I mentioned already, I think the framing of the story this way, it was certainly a good decision, because first, we avoid the trap of making the movie boring by watching Tolkien sit at his desk and write a book for 2 hours. It makes the film more personal and more human. And at the same time, we also get a glimpse of who Tolkien was as a person and what events shaped him and what his ideals were, which naturally helps us all understand better why he wrote the things he wrote and what he was going for in them. Now, the movie is not perfect. If I had to point one thing that I didn't like about it, it's some of the visuals, particularly during the battle scenes. So, oftentimes we will have these little visions and glimpses in the smoke and in the fire of dragons, of horse riders, even a Sauron-like figure somewhere in there. And I get what the filmmakers were going for. So they were trying to show us those early seeds of the visuals of the story of Middle Earth, as Tolkien may or may not have seen them in his feverish state. But I did think it was a bit over the top, a bit on the nose, and I would rather leave it more subtle, because I like it when the movie trusts its audience to figure stuff out, and I think it would have been obvious to just keep the battle scenes realistic without all these added stuff. But that said, it's a minor thing, and as a whole, I think that the movie really works and it doesn't disappoint. In fact, I was pleasantly surprised. I expected it to be a bit more boring, which it wasn't. I think it has real heart. It has this weird sort of kindness and Britishness about it, and especially about the scenes of the secret society and Tolkien and his friends. And most of all, it manages to do what very few movies manage to do, which is I thought it gets progressively better with each passing minute. And despite the fact that it begins kind of slowly, it just finds its footing, and towards the end it really comes into its own and gets really, really great. And I thought that the last 10-15 minutes maybe are really touching and emotional in particular. So you basically leave the cinema in awe.